A Village of Freaks, Chapter 3, First Part. Elsewhere, another confrontation was about to unfold. The Marcus clan's bus was approaching a section of reddish-brown valley, some 30 miles from the bridge. The reason Kyle hadn't been sent along ahead was that Borgoff had calculated the speed of the carriage and the time left until daybreak, deciding that the bus itself would be sufficient to catch up with their foe. Added to that was the fact that, if Kyle left, he would have had to look after Layla and Grovek himself. Plus, he had reservations about letting Kyle tackle the situation on his own. He was also worried about Nolt, whom he'd sent to dispatch D. Though considering his brother's special skills with that staff, the task of finishing off a hunter who'd almost certainly drown should be easier than busting a baby's arm. Once they'd wrapped up their work here, they could always just shoot off a flare and call him back. "Hold on, that's a flare," said Kyle, squinting to see while he kept his grip on the wheel. "What's that?" Borgoff asked, poking his rough face out of the bedroom. A single streak of light rose into a sky already bright with the radiance of dawn. The streak quickly grew several times more brilliant. "A flare way out here, smack dab in the middle of nowhere. I'd say that couldn't be nothing but the nobility. Bingo. Roughly 3 miles from here. We'll be on them in 5 minutes. The bastard ain't gonna be able to move a muscle." Laughing confidently, Kyle added, "One good jab will do it." As he licked his lips, Kyle stroked the tip of one of the stakes secured to the wall. "Still, there's something I don't like about this," Borgoff said, folding his arms. "What does he hope to gain by firing off a flare way out here? Even if he wanted help, there ain't no one who'd come." After some consideration, Borgoff suddenly raised his bearded countenance again. "Ah, no way," he gasped. "We'd better make some speed, Kyle. If my huncher's right, that bastard might have called in some serious trouble." Kyle's face grew tense at his brother's grave tone. "Here we go," he shouted. With a change in gear and a stomp on the accelerator, the bus raced forward. The scene outside the window started to course by at an intense speed. The scenery of the stony mountain crags grew more and more desolate. White smoke gushed from the earth in odd spots and crept heavily along the ground, evidence of nearby volcanic activity. The area around the vents was caked with yellow lumps of sulfur. Even the rocks formed extraordinary shapes, some menacing the heavens like spears, others looking so impossibly fragile that they'd crumble at a touch. The mere passing of the vehicle caused cracks to form here and there in the depressed earth, and, when something watery but not quite the shade of blood squirted up from below, the tiny insects that flew slowly through this world were seized by spasms and dropped to the ground. A number of times the bus plowed over bleached bones, mountains of them, contributed by everything from huge fang-bearing beasts and down to the smallest of vermin. The atmosphere was permeated not only by sulfur, but by strong toxins as well. Before long, the road narrowed and the rocky surface to either side grew higher, giving the dramatic effect of an avalanche about to sweep over the bus. Neither Kyle nor Borgoff could conceal their concern. They continued down the menacing road through the valley for about 20 minutes. Then, without warning, Kyle slowed down. "There it is," he shouted. Ahead of them, the blurred form of the carriage was visible in the depths of the swirling white smoke. "What should we do, bro? Just keep going and ram 'em?" The bus had plates of armored steel bolted to the front after all. "Nope," the older brother replied. "You gotta keep in mind the girl might still be alive. Any way you slice it, the noble can't move by daylight. We'll get out and take care of him. Put on a gas mask." When the two brothers had turned themselves around, the door to the bedroom opened and Layla looked out. Not surprisingly, her complexion was still pale, but her eyes blazed with the will to fight. "Picked a hell of a place to stop," she said. "Did you find them? You get some rest now, and look after Grove," Borgoff said as he slipped on his gas mask. "No way. Let me go with you." Layla caught the oldest of the clan by the arm, and the muscles felt like stone. "This is a noble we're dealing with. Even if he can't move during the day, that still doesn't mean he'll be defenseless. You can use all the backup you can get. A gimp would just get in the way," Borgoff replied. "But, Layla, why don't you give it a rest?" Kyle interjected, a javelin tight in his grip. On his right hip, there hung another gas mask he intended to use for the abducted girl. "Look, you heard what Borgoff said. He told you to just leave this to the two of us. I mean, look how high the sun still is. There ain't nothing to worry about." His voice was coaxing, but had a touch of carnal desire in it, and Layla turned away. She nodded, apparently giving in. "Now don't you go out there." With that final admonishment, Borgoff and Kyle stood on the steps by the door. When Kyle pressed the switch by his side, a semi-transparent veil descended from overhead, sealing the two of them off from the rest of the vehicle. This wasn't the first time they had to stalk their quarry in a poison-shrouded environment. Opening the door manually, the two stepped down to the ground. They wore no other protection besides the gas masks. Artificial antibodies in their blood could handle the rest of the poisonous vapors and radiation. Their feet didn't make the slightest sound as they hustled over the ground. The noble's carriage was motionless, just branding the earth with its faint and lonely shadow. Even the 6 black steeds hung their heads, appearing either to be asleep or to be absorbed in contemplation. Contrary to what one might expect, this picture of defenselessness sowed seeds of tension and anxiety in the hearts of the pair. Kyle adjusted his grip on the javelin. 10 feet to the carriage. White smoke robbed the pair of their vision, and then cleared. Without a sound, the pair leapt to either side. And between them and the carriage there suddenly stood a black silhouette. The elongated figure garbed in a black hooded robe seemed to be an illusion, something conjured up by the poisonous vapors. "Who the hell are you?" Kyle asked in a low voice. The filters on their masks doubled as voice amplifiers. Giving no answer, the shadow raised its right hand. Flying with a dull growl, a steel arrow pierced it through the wrist. The shadow shook. There hadn't been just one arrow. Thanks to Borgoff's masterful skill, arrows also stuck in the shadow's head and the left side of its chest. While it was true they were dealing with an unknown element here, 3 arrows may have been overdoing it a bit. But then, that was the Marcus way of doing things. The shadow turned its face up, and the brothers' eyes opened wide. The hood was empty. When the plain robe fell flatly to the ground with 3 arrows still stuck in it, Borgoff forgot to launch a second attack. Something had occurred to him, and, with no warning, he turned and loosed an arrow at the carriage. As he watched it punch nicely through the polished iron plating to the rear, the vehicle's window lost its contours, the wheels twisted limply, and the entire carriage became a single sheet of black cloth trailing along the ground. Eerie laughter rose like smoke around them, high and low. The weird but beautiful voice that seemed to escape from the bowels of the earth was that of a woman. About 30 feet ahead of the pair, a slender feminine figure came into focus. Laughing haughtily, she said, "Followed a noble all this way, have we? I came out here to see the extent of your abilities, but as I expected, they really don't amount to much. As such, naught awaits you on this road but the boiling fires of hell. You'd do well to scamper off now with your tails between your legs." Sensing an inordinate evil in the chiming golden bell that was her voice, Kyle shouted, "You the one who pulled that hocus-pocus just now?" The javelin was in his left hand, and his right held one of his deadly crescent blades at the ready. "Unfortunately, no," the woman said. "Although, you're actually quite fortunate it wasn't me. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten off with a mere prank. If you value your boring little lives, you'd best turn back post-haste." "Where's the noble?" inquired Borgoff. The strange thing was, he had both eyes shut tight. "In our village," the woman replied. "He came to retain the finest guards as insurance against the maggots like you following him." Laughing snidely, she added, "Perhaps you boys should hire a few of us too, to serve as hunters and go after him." Beneath his gas mask, Kyle's face grew black with rage. His left hand went into action. When the javelin flew through the air and passed vainly through the figure of the woman only to be embedded in the wall of rock behind her, indistinct shapes appeared all around them, hovering in the air. All of the shapes looked like the woman. "Girl," Kyle spat after the flash of crescent blade he swept around passed through the specters without meeting any resistance. He looked to his older brother. "So that's what you were up to, Borgoff?" Eyes still shut, and the giant nodded, and the sneering yet mellifluous laughter stole into their ears again. "You still don't understand, do you, little fools? May you wander this poison smoke for all eternity." A split second later, her words became a scream. One of the shimmering figures behind them had been pierced by Borgoff's arrow. When and how the giant fired was a mystery. Kyle hadn't seen his brother's hands move. What's more, his bow and the arrow cocked in it had been pointed straight ahead from the start. Blood's own aroma mixed with the stench of poisonous smoke. You bastard!" she screeched, the shadowy figures fading as quickly as her cry. "Bro, you did it." "Yep." Borgoff gave a nod, and perhaps it was the knowledge that the woman was gone for good that made his tiger-like eyes shine so strangely. Immediately, the brothers headed back toward the bus. And the door closed, and once the poisonous gas had been evacuated through the exhaust vents, they entered the main cabin. There, for the first time, Borgoff struck the wall of the vehicle with his boulder of a fist. The ceiling rattled. "What do you want to do now, bro?" "This is a huge mess now. That bastard Noble's gone and holed up in the village of the Barbaroi." Kyle wasn't the only one who grew tense at his brother's words. Layla, who'd been waiting for them, reacted the same way. For the first time, something resembling paling fear flowed through the faces of the siblings. But even that was transient. "Sounds like fun," Layla muttered, and it even seemed a vermilion flush of excitement was rising in her pale face. The village of the Barbaroi. Monsters and freaks have been interbreeding there for 5,000 years, honing their sorceries and skills in the darkness. I always hoped to try my hand against them someday. Damn straight. Kyle bared his teeth. If he's holed up in their village, there's a pretty damn good chance he'll... Well, actually, the woman already told us what he was going to do. Said he'd come to hire her and others. There ain't no two ways about it, he's definitely got himself some freaky guards now. Kyle snickered. I'm just itching for a piece of them. We've all heard rumors about the supernatural powers of the Barbaroi. The question is, whose skills will come out on top? Ours or theirs? I mean, wouldn't it be great to throw down with them just once? Of course it would, the oldest Marcus replied. I don't care if it's the Barbaroi or the nobility, his sacred ancestor himself. We dye our hands in their blood. And just one thing, though. Our first order of business is that bastard Noble and the $10 million. I don't want to do any fighting unless we're getting paid for it. For the time being, we'll keep a watch on this nest of freaks and wait for Nolt to get back. Me and Kyle will go. Layla, you send up a flare as soon as you're clear of this corner of hell, and then wait there for Nolt. And the brutal siblings looked at each other and let out a lurid, blood-curdling laugh. What then was this village of the Barbaroi that even they found so difficult to dismiss? Who resided there? And what were their darkness-spawned powers? First part, end.